Senator. Pompeo, I want to get you to respond. Look, this has been a tough week, tough 10 days for the credibility of your committee, thanks to the McCarthy statements, the Hanna statements, and this other. Do you feel as if the committee's credibility is now under question?
Chuck, this isn't about the committee. This is about the American people. We've been working since May of 2014 to get them the answers. There's 4 Americans that were killed. We had our first ambassador murdered since 1979. This week, we're going to speak with former Secretary Clinton. We've conducted dozens and dozens of interviews. We will ask her the same kind of fact-centric questions that we've asked the other witnesses. We have an obligation to hold folks accountable and make sure that we reduce the risk that something like this could ever possibly happen again.
I guess one of the questions I have is, what's taking so long? And I say this because the Benghazi committee is now longer than Watergate, longer than Iran-Contra, longer than the look into other major events. I think we have a whole thing on screen here about how many different select committees took less time, including the Warren Commission. Why has this taken so long?
You know, you mentioned Watergate. Mr. Schiff actually compared this committee to Watergate in a New York Times op-ed. But this is worse in some ways, right? Secretary Clinton tried to hide every one of her emails. She destroyed 30,000 of them, and now we have an FBI investigation of those very emails. What's taken us so long is that the Democrats on the committee and this administration have played hide the ball and have denied us records that the American people deserve and that our committee needs to complete our investigation. We would have been happy to move more quickly, but we've met with obstruction all along the way.
All right, before I get to Congressman Schiff, one more question for you. You talked about all the different witnesses you called. Why haven't you called the following witnesses? General Carter Ham, who led U.S. African Command at that time. Samantha Power, who was in the White House now, an ambassador to the UN. You could have called her. The former CIA director at the time, General Petraeus. He hasn't been called. Former Defense Secretary Leanne Panetta wasn't called. Why haven't these people been called before your committee if this is about Benghazi? They were all there at the time.
Chuck, we're not done. You may think this investigation ends on Thursday, but let me assure you that it does not. We began in May, and we are going to continue. This on Thursday is just one more step along the way. We may well call many of the folks that you identified there. We still have many witnesses, many documents that we haven't seen. As recently as last Thursday, we received Christopher Stevens' emails. How on earth could any of the other committees have completed their work properly without access to the senior person on the ground emails? We now have them. No thanks to the Democrats on the committee who opposed us all along the way.
Congressman Schiff, when you first joined the committee, you said you were willing to look at this in the big picture, take this very seriously. You have accused the Republicans of not taking it seriously. But it's in your power. If you don't think they're doing it seriously, why haven't you come up with a witness list? Why haven't you decided, you know what, I want to do my own fact-finding. I don't like what they're doing, but it's in your power to, if you think the investigation needs to go in a more serious direction, you can do it, and you haven't done it.
Chuck, I have, and I've tried. In fact, the first 2 hearings this committee had were hearings I proposed to look at the ARB recommendations and how they've been implemented. I requested ways that we could speed up the document production, which were rejected. We requested witnesses to come before the committee, and you know what they did? They interviewed these witnesses without even telling us, because ultimately when they did interview the witnesses, they didn't corroborate the Republican conspiracy theories. The reason, the answer to your question, Chuck, about why we haven't brought in the defense secretary, as they said they would, why we haven't brought in the CIA director, why we haven't brought in any of these witnesses for a hearing, is because they're not running for president. When Richard Hanna...
But couldn't you have asked for this?
We could ask for it.
Don't you have subpoena power?
No, we don't.
Yeah?
We don't. In fact...
And you can't bring these people in? You can't invite them yourself?
We can't set up a hearing. We can't issue a subpoena. We can't even vote on a subpoena. Chuck, we asked the Republicans at the beginning, let's establish rules for the committee. Let's establish rules so we can vote on subpoenas. You can even have the majority vote, whatever. They wouldn't even establish rules. And why? They want to run this the way they want it. They want to be able to go after Secretary Clinton.
But hang on, but aren't they justified in the fact that if it wasn't for the Benghazi committee, we wouldn't have known about this private server. We wouldn't have known about these emails. And it does look like somebody is at least trying to make it harder to get information. Isn't that the point?
No, the point is, what do we know about Benghazi that we didn't know when this investigation started? What can we tell the families? What can we tell the American people about these core conspiracy allegations, that there was a stand-down order, or that there was gun running, or that the secretary interfered with security? And the fact is, Chuck, after 17 months, $4.5 million, we have nothing new to tell the families. Apart from that there was a private email server, that doesn't tell us anything about Benghazi. And let me say this, too. When Richard Hanna talks about what the Republican conference views this investigation, he can speak to the view of the conference. But when Kevin McCarthy, who's part of the leadership, talks about the motivation to go after Clinton, he is part of the leadership. He is in the room when the committee is formed. And finally, it's not just what these people outside the committee are saying, but when a Republican whistleblower is saying this is how they're executing the strategy to go after Clinton, and we see that execution when these hearings that you mentioned with the defense secretary, when the CIA director, with Samantha Powers, they're all canceled. When the only hearing we have is with Secretary Clinton, it shows that the committee is doing exactly what these Republicans are saying.
I know you wanted to chime in. Go ahead, and then I want to have Ron Fournier ask you guys a question from the National Journal.
Chuck, facts matter. We'll see that on Thursday. What Mr. Schiff said is just false. The Democrats haven't asked for a single witness. I'd ask him to name the witness that he came to us and wrote us a letter and asked for that witness. Not a single interview has been conducted without Democrats or Democrat staff participating. And with respect to the server, the FBI,
That's just not true, Mike.
the FBI will sort out the server. We'll see if she violated the Espionage Act. Our task is to solve the riddle of the 4 Americans who were killed.
Ron.
Congressman Pompeo, your party promised to run a nonpartisan, non-witch hunt campaign that's been proven to be false. Congressman Schiff, your party, your candidate, promised us that what you did with their emails was above board and didn't jeopardize or even potentially compromise U.S. secrets. We know that is false. What is either party going to be able to do or going to try to do to try to restore some modicum of credibility to a system that's hemorrhaging trust? Both your parties have been lying to us.
You know, I think the reality is, with respect to this select committee, it's too late. There's too much water under the bridge.
With respect to the Secretary Clinton and in your party, when are you going to stop pretending what she did was above board? And when are you going to stop pretending that she did not compromise?
The Secretary has been the first to admit that the use of a private server was a mistake.
And was it above board? She says it was above board. Do you think it was? Do you think it violated policy?
And that is the job of the Republican National Committee, to go after her. And the Democratic Party Committee, they can go after Jeb Bush for his use of a personal server. That's not our job in a taxpayer-funded investigation.
Do you think her email server violated federal property policy, yes or no?
I think what she did was lawful at the time, and it was a mistake.
Was it against federal rules? It clearly was to anybody reading the rules. Was it to you?
The rules allowed her to use a private server as long as she preserved her emails, which she did. Was it desirable? No, it wasn't, and I think she's recognized that.
What about the witch hunt? You promised that it would not be a partisan committee, but obviously it is. Your party's admitting that it was a partisan.
Ron, I couldn't disagree with you more. I think folks will see that on Thursday, and they think they'll see it in the final report as well. They will see that Chairman Gallion and our committee has run a fact-centric effort to do the mission, to hold someone accountable for what happened on September 11, 2012.
How long for this final report? Is it going to be in the middle of 2016? Is it going to be
after
it's a great
question, Andrea. Maybe Mr. Schiff can answer that for you. We'll complete our task as soon as
let me just follow up here.
The reason there's no answer to that question, Andrea, is that we don't know what we're looking for. We can't put an end date on it because we don't know what this committee is supposed to look for. Apart from damaging Hillary Clinton, it has no reason for existence.
Let's just say, if the reason for existence is to find out, did Hillary Clinton make a grievous error in not following up security complaints? How could she tell the various investigating committees that that was below her, that it never reached her level? That could be a legitimate reason, but why then do you call Sid Blumenthal and Huma Abedin and all of these other personal aides and non-aides? Why have you focused so much on emails and not on the central question of why was the security failure at that consulate?
Well, we have focused on the central failure. We have focused on the security issues, and we will continue. You'll see lots of questions about that on Thursday. But let me speak to Mr. Blumenthal. It goes directly to this security issue. We see now that former Secretary Clinton relied on Mr. Blumenthal for most of her intelligence. That is, she was relying
on... That is factually not correct.
No, it is absolutely factually correct.
Relied on Mr. Blumenthal for most of her intelligence?
Ms. Mitchell, take a look at the email trails, and you will see...
I cover the State Department. That is just factually not correct.
We just have a factual disagreement.
This is Alex, quickly, jump in.
The problem, since this is about Benghazi and 4 lives that were lost under Hillary Clinton's watch, what should she have done to prevent the loss of those 4 lives? What should she have done before? And when they actually were threatened, should she have done more?
Let me talk to before. The ARB from Tanzania made very clear that the Secretary of State was supposed to personally review security at high threat areas. That is, not hand it down to a deputy or an undersecretary or anyone else. That ARB in the late 1990s said that the Secretary of State, himself or herself, was supposed to take responsibility and personally review those security plans. It appears that she did not do that. And so if you ask what could she have done, that would have been a very good start.
But we knew that a year or 2 ago.
Let's look at the ARB on Benghazi. not the one that the IRB on Benghazi, a nonpartisan investigation, decided that the chain of command in terms of security at the embassies and the consular facilities did not rise to the Secretary. The Secretary of State was not involved in the micromanagement of security at these facilities.
Shouldn't she have been?
Why wasn't she? I don't know that we want the Secretary of State making security decisions at particular facilities around the world. It's a big job as Secretary of State, and I don't know that we want her micromanaging the security.
Well, if not
but I do want to say this.
Responsible for the security
my colleague, well, they are responsible overall, and the Secretary of State has said that she is responsible overall. But let me address the Blumenthal allegations, because
that night,
this is very important, because the way this committee has operated is by leak of damaging information with only one objective, and that is all the leaks have a common denominator. All of the leaks are designed to hurt Secretary Clinton. They generate a news story as recently as the one about Mr. Blumenthal. And then within the last 24 to 48 hours, the CIA informs us that notwithstanding the chairman's 13-page letter alleging a damaging leak of a CIA source, the CIA has now informed us there was nothing classified in this last tranche.
You want to name that source this morning on the air? The CIA has said that source's name is not classified. Put the name on national TV this morning, Mr. Schiff.
I'm going to pause it there. Before I let you go, Congressman Pompeo, you have said you will run for Speaker if Paul Ryan does not. Let me ask you this. Ted Cruz wouldn't call Paul Ryan a true conservative, will you?
Absolutely. Paul Ryan's a solid conservative.
And if he runs, you'll support him?
That's correct.
Congressman Pompeo, Congressman Schiff, you guys are going to become even more famous to the American public. On Thursday, we will look forward to what I'm guessing is going to be a spirited day.